Welcome to Stop My Crisis. I'm your host, Vivian Gaspar, here to help New Jerseyans get through their various types of crises. And here with me today is Diane Hartshorn. Diane Hartshorn is the president and managing member of the Hartshorn Group, a recruiting and staffing company which Diane founded 40 years ago. Diane is currently serving as a member appointed by the governor on the Governor's Council on Gender Parity. Diane, what is gender parity?
Well, gender parity, first of all, we are the only state in the union that has gender parity council. And this is a council that fights vigorously for the equal pay for women for the same job.
That's something we really need. Isn't there a statistic around that?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, in New Jersey, a woman with a bachelor's degree and a man with a bachelor's degree doing the same job, the woman only earns 77 cents to the male dollar.
Do we know why that occurs?
Well, yes, it's because we have different anatomy.
That's the only reason?
That's the only reason we can figure out.
How do we fix that?
Well, we did, the Gender Parity Council actually did a very important study on why women leave law, because one of the attorneys had said, look, I had a baby, I didn't have a lobotomy, and she was not accepted back into the firm once she'd had a child. So it
but
is
wait a second. Can't she fight that? As even forgetting the fact that she's an attorney, there's laws to protect people in just such an instance.
That's true. However, we also have the real world, and then we have the laws. And that's why women leave accounting, leave consulting, leave law, leave so many practices, because they're not being treated equally.
So then let me ask you, what is the state of employment in New Jersey?
Well, this is a good month to ask me, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics, specifically for New Jersey, said that in June we added 22,000 jobs to the private sector.
That's very impressive.
Impressive. They're very impressed.
That's good news.
Because this was the best number since February of 1996. We have not had that good of a number since then.
In 20 years.
20
that
and
is
a half
good
years.
news.
That is very good news. Now, it also, on the other side, the flip side, the unemployment number right now is 5.1. So that's 5.1 of people who are currently collecting unemployment. What it doesn't factor in, Vivian, is the fact that there are probably 225,000 New Jerseyans who have been off unemployment and out of work for 2 to 3 years. And many of them have just given up. You know, they have no way of getting back into the job market.
So what then is the actual number? Because they're only counting, that 5% only counts people receiving benefits currently. But if you look at true unemployment numbers, what is that really?
I've heard whispers. Now, this is not, you'll never see it in print, but it really means that New Jersey unemployment is closer to 15.1% than 5.1%.
Why don't they ever mention that as the truth? Because the
Because
reality is they want to know who's truly unemployed.
I think that according to the Department of Labor, they only are obligated to record those New Jerseyans currently collecting from the state.
Now, why does it benefit them to skew those numbers?
Well, it's pretty depressing to hear 15.1. It also affects people, maybe companies looking at moving into New Jersey. I mean, 5.1 is a very vibrant number. That's not too bad, you know, and plus we had 22,200 jobs added. So that's a very encouraging thing, and of course we're always trying to attract companies back to stay in New Jersey and to come into New Jersey.
But people really should understand what the real numbers are.
Yeah, the real numbers are much, much deeper.
So really quickly, can you just give me a brief answer to how does a candidate prepare for a job fair? Because that might be a good way to look for jobs.
Well,
and so any tips on that one?
Yes, sure. We can make it really simple. There are skillions of information sheets out there on how to do this, but I will give one very important tip. And I brought a prop. This is an interviewing purse.
Why is that the interview purse?
Well, it's an interviewing and job. It's when they go to the job fairs. It's a job fair purse, not for men, for women, of course. Well, you have to. Well, maybe for men. I don't know.
That doesn't look like a purse to me.
No, that's not a purse. That's true. But what it has is an outside pocket. And when you're wearing it, when you're going around, you will have a portfolio with your resume. But this purse, you can then slip out your card and you slip in the person's card that you're meeting. versus going to any interview or a job fair carrying a weekender
Got
bag.
it. So my next question and the last one, so we can wrap up, is can you give us a great website for job fair information, please?
Oh, well, first of all, we have a number of them. One of the really important ones that candidates don't seem to know about is Glassdoor, www.glassdoor.
Oh, okay, great.
We're going to put it on the
We're going to
site
put it on
here.
the
Right.
information here.
Glassdoor, and there's also one that when people are just getting started back into the work world or they want to try something new, it's called wetfeet.com.
Great.
Very interesting.
Thank you very much, Diane, for coming on
Oh,
and
absolutely.
educating us what the real numbers look like.
Yes.
Thank
Real
you. Thank you very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you very much, too.
Do you need to blow the whistle on unsafe conditions at work? You may be protected by New Jersey law and by the federal agency called OSHA. For information, go to njwec.org or osha.gov. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
Welcome back to Stop My Crisis. I am your host, Vivian Gaspar, and here with me today I'm very honored to have Joyce Gioia. Joyce has spoken, ready for this, 7 continents, 21 countries, and 47 states. She's also presented for Honda, SAP, and BP. She's the author of 3 business bestseller books, and she's the futurist and professional speaker recently at Harvard University. Welcome, Joyce. Thank you so much for coming.
Dilbert is stuck in a really unhappy job. But we don't have to be stuck because there are things that people can learn that can really help them to get what they need and want from their boss.
So, what is it that you mean by how to get what you want from your boss? Tell us more about that.
Most people think that either you have to manipulate the situation or you have to somehow create an environment where they would automatically feel like they have to give it to you. But in truth, there are 5 simple steps that you can take that can really smooth the way and allow you to get what you want without a lot of stress.
So that means at work, in your environment, is it still true that you get more flies with honey than vinegar?
For sure you get more flies with honey. The first thing you want to do is establish your worth. And the way that you do that is whether you're cleaning out closets or selling a lot of product, you want to make sure that people really understand what contribution you are making to the organization.
What is a good way to do that without sounding like you're patting yourself on the back too much?
Talk about what you have done in the context of what it means for the organization. And if you do it right, if you talk about the organization and make it seem like you are a team player, then typically it won't come off as being very self-serving.
That is great information. So my last question is there a quick takeaway that you can provide our audience?
Yes. When you are headed into this meeting, you might want to let your boss know that you are going to be talking about something that you want. So, in other words, you have a conversation before the conversation. And if you're smart, you'll acknowledge your boss, whether it's a man or a woman, for being the person that you need that person to be.
Do you even give any kind of contribution, acknowledgement to perhaps they're a mentor of some sort in your life, how they've attributed to your success? Is that a good idea?
Very good idea. If you can first acknowledge how your boss supports everybody, including you, then already you're going to be a leg up on others.
Are you saying it never hurts to put your boss on a little bit of a pedestal?
For sure. And by the way, what I encourage people to do is to write out and practice what they want to say.
I think that's a good rule of thumb for anything important you need to say, from a job interview to re-interviewing for your boss to get the next step up. Thank you so much, Joyce, for coming to share this valuable information with our viewers.
Follow my tips and you will be able to get what you want from your boss.
Excellent information. Thank you.
Spills of hazardous chemicals, toxic smoke in the air. By law, every town and county in New Jersey must have an up-to-date emergency response plan available to its employees, emergency response workers, and the public. We can better prevent disaster if we're all prepared. For information, go to njwec.org or osha.gov. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
Welcome to Stop My Crisis, and I'm your host, Vivian Gaspar. And today we have so many people who are starting their own businesses, even sometimes starting them on the side. Have you ever sold anything on eBay? Maybe Craigslist? Have you started liking that money coming in so much you've started looking through your garage or creating new things just to sell? Maybe reselling what other people have already sold to you. You might not think they can come back and bite you, but today here with us now is Doug Goldstein, and he's going to address some of those possible issues. Doug Goldstein is a shareholder with the law firm of Spector and Aaronworth PC, which is based in Florham Park, New Jersey. And he practices in the fields of creditor and debtor rights, as well as bankruptcy law and commercial litigation. Doug has been practicing law for 17 years and is here today to discuss with us what to do if you are sued. Welcome, Doug. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And tell us, what should people be worrying about? Why are people sued in New Jersey now?
One of the biggest groups that's filing lawsuits today are institutional creditors, banks. They're pursuing past due balances on credit cards, personal loans, business loans, and student loans.
Oh, student loans. Isn't that one of our largest problems?
It's getting to be there, yes. And even the careful spender who makes every payment on time can be sued.
Really? You think if you're making your payments on time, what are you possibly getting sued for?
Well, what happens, going back to those student loans, there are good parents who co-sign the obligation that their children borrow to go to college. And there are also a lot of folks out there who sign a personal guarantee for their business. In New Jersey, like a lot of places, you have to personally guarantee small business loans and commercial leases.
Oh, that's true. I understand that they could be as many as 8 months to a year to personally guarantee if you're a business owner that wants to be in a commercial space. Could that be one of those issues?
Yeah, in fact, a personal guarantee can be perpetual. I know someone who signed a personal guarantee for his business. 13 years later, he sold his business and may have forgotten that he signed the personal guarantee. The business was then put into bankruptcy long after he sold the business.
Oh.
And guess what? The creditor sued him on his personal guarantee.
And could he ever relieve that debt with the bankruptcy, or is he obligated to fulfill that debt?
Because the business filed for bankruptcy, he did not. He was personally responsible for the entire...
Was he able to make any payment arrangements perhaps on that?
No, unfortunately he could not.
So what can someone do if they find themselves on the receiving end of a lawsuit?
The most universal advice I can give someone who's being sued is do not ignore the lawsuit. There are...
No ostrich, right? Don't put your head in the sand.
Yes, absolutely. There are important deadlines, and there are steps if you don't take. A default judgment could be entered against you.
What is a default judgment?
Well, a judgment that's entered against somebody who did not respond to a lawsuit.
What can happen if you do become an ostrich and ignore these valuable deadlines, where unfortunately, could there ever be perhaps a garnishment on a paycheck, or could there ever be any other off-stemming legal issues from ignoring a lawsuit?
If someone ignores a lawsuit, a judgment could be entered. And when a judgment is entered, in New Jersey, a judgment can be filed as a lien on real estate, which means that if a lien is placed on that real estate by a judgment, you can't sell that real estate and pass clear title without satisfying the judgment.
Well, let me ask you this. Not everyone is a homeowner. What happens if you do not own real estate and you are somehow seemed deemed that you are in default of that judgment. What happens to someone who doesn't have assets?
There are a lot of folks who don't own real estate, and a sheriff or court officer can levy against your wages. They can levy against a bank account. And if that happens, and you've written checks to your other creditors, those checks could bounce. And then you're going to have a serious problem with your other creditors.
So then my last question is going to be, is a way to get out of that situation to file personal bankruptcy, perhaps a Chapter 7?
That's one option. Before it gets to that point, the best first step is, of course, to read the papers and see what it's all about. And my second piece of advice would be speak to an attorney. Find out what your legal rights are. There might be an argument you have that isn't clearly evident to you that you can raise to challenge the lawsuit and maybe even resolve it amicably.
Wow, to resolve a lawsuit amicably, that would be a miracle. Thank you so much for sharing this information, because I'm sure a lot of people have found themselves in this situation. Thank you, Doug, for coming on.
Thank you.
Hazardous chemicals. Could you be exposed at work? Employers are required by law to train you on the hazards of chemicals you work with, how they could harm you, and how exposure can be prevented. For information, go to njwec.org or osha.gov. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
Welcome back to Stop My Crisis, and here with me today is Andrea Masterbatista. Andrea is an inspirational speaker and owner of a company called Operation Inspiration. Andrea creates and facilitates workshops that helps people to create and live their most fulfilling lives. One of her focuses on helping people to navigate through the fears, anticipating going back to school and starting a new career midlife. Welcome, Andrea. Thank you very much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
I appreciate you coming down, because what you have to say, I think a lot of people are going through. The fear and trepidation of doing something completely new when they're not starting out fresh. Maybe they're in their 30s or 40s, right?
Very true, very true.
So tell me about how you started your company, Operation Inspiration.
Well, I was in corporate America for the better part of 16 years and was downsized at the end of 2004 towards the end of my 30s. And I was given 3 months with a career counselor to decide what my next career move was going to be. And in speaking with him, one day he asked me the question that you hear in interviews all the time: where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? And whenever I was asked that question, the answer was always a little bit different, but I realized in the moment that he asked me that the sentence that was always there was, I want to inspire people. So that was a light bulb moment for me, and that was where Operation Inspiration was born. And in speaking with him over the next couple of months, we developed this idea of how I can do workshops to help people create and live their most fulfilling lives.
That is amazing. Usually people just look at what's the next job down the pike. And did you have any fears in doing this, leaving corporate America?
Absolutely.
How did you handle that?
Well, in tandem with starting the company, I interviewed for other corporate jobs, but it became clearer and clearer to me that this was my dream, this was my vision, and it was my calling of what I was supposed to be doing with the rest of my life.
And how long have you been doing this now?
For, I would say, 12 years.
12 years? Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a long time for any business to survive.
It is my greatest personal and professional joy.
Well, I'm so happy that you have that courage to follow a new vision and dream that so many people just don't have that inner courage. And so I'm happy that you're here to share some of the tips of how to find that inner courage to do something new. What are the most common fears of people who go back to school to start a new career midlife? What do those look like?
Well, first of all, it is because they're midlife and they're going back to school with kids in their teens and 20s, so they feel uncomfortable. Their fears they're not going to fit in. Why am I doing this? Am I crazy to do this at the stage that I'm at? Also, do I have the right to do this? You know, I had my start, 15, 20 years ago. Now I'm restarting. So that's some of the fears that really can stop you from doing it. So I help people to get rid of those fears.
So what would be the really top 3 ways you help someone conquer those fears?
Okay. But the same way that my coaches helped me in asking me, one of my coaches asked me a really important question about starting Operation Inspiration, saying, in a year from now, where will you be with this? And that's really, really key, the way he phrased it. Where will you be instead of where do you want to be? It's two different things, because he was challenging me to actually do it. So I ask people questions to challenge them how to do it. So where will you be with it? What will it look like? And then I ask them also, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years after that? So to get them thinking forward rather than thinking in the present and all the fears of now.
And so that's that would be the first one, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Give me two more.
2 more questions.
Well, no, the ways that you help people conquer these fears, because that just seems overwhelming. I'm in my 40s, and I can't imagine something starting completely, totally new. So.
Oftentimes with the fears, people think they're the only ones that have that fear. So I let them know that I'm not alone, and I tell them my story and the stories of several of my friends and colleagues that have been through the same thing, because I'm finding more and more people are in that second phase of their career of what am I going to do now at this age. So I let them know, secondly, that they're not alone.
And lastly, so we can wrap up our time, unfortunately.
That's okay. Thirdly is having a can-do attitude. They're afraid that they can't do it. So in talking to them, I find out what their strengths and abilities are, and we play on them. And through those strengths and abilities, I let them know they absolutely can achieve their dreams and the life that they are meant to live.
And you're going to stay around and be their cheerleader.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Everyone needs a cheerleader. That's really good. I mean, that's a fantastic thing to offer to someone, is to be their cheerleader. And what would be one fast takeaway that you offer a lot of people?
The fast takeaway, again, is the can-do attitude. Whatever your dream and goal is, you were given the ability to make it happen. You can do it.
Thank you again, Andrea. I appreciate it, because so many people find themselves in this situation. And thank you for being somebody who helps them through it. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Vivian.